Welcome to LoyalTV. We're in Muskogee, Oklahoma, where James Franklin Ledbetter stood watch during our state's formative years.
He's a legendary figure in our community. He was one of the most important law enforcement in the history of our area. But as time goes on, his legends go away, slowly but surely. He first gained his notoriety here working the railroads. And he was involved in several different train robbery attempts that created quite a legend for him. And eventually, he went into the U.S. Marshals Service here in Indian Territory. And he gained quite the reputation for his ability to track people, to be able to find outlaws. They would send Bud Ledbetter and his posse out, almost the first ones that would be sent out in Indian Territory. At times, different communities would even reach out to him. So he, for a time period, he dropped out of the U.S. Marshals Service when Muskogee called him to quell some problems. And Haskell was a new town at that time. And they asked him to come there, and definitely involved in Veneta. And he had a lot of activity in Muskogee working for the U.S. Marshal's office, which was out of here during that time period. But in 1903, he really came home here to Muskogee, and he moved his wife and his family here in 1903 to Muskogee. And it was during that time that we can only imagine what was going on in Muskogee at that time. Muskogee was larger than Tulsa. It was the center of activity here in eastern Oklahoma. It was doubling, tripling, quadrupling in population yearly. People from all over the United States were coming here. Statehood was pending. There was just so much activity here. Well, with that became a lot of legal activities, gambling halls. Liquor was a big problem here. And at the time of statehood in 1907, the U.S. Marshal Service here basically was over. And law enforcement turned to the Muskogee Police Department. And so Bud Ledbetter was named as the first police chief. But he was just such a legend here for all the things he did. He captured many different famous outlaw groups from this area in his time, and he was like a celebrity here in that time period. He served as the police chief 3 or 4 years here, but then he became the sheriff of Muskogee County for several terms. He was up to 70 years old, and people kept wanting to run. And so here he is, 70 years old, and we have a really interesting picture of him, 1923, with all these stills around him. That was one of the last pictures I know of him, and actually being in law enforcement here. There are many lawmen in American history that we hear of. We have things of Wyatt Earp or Bat Masterson, and we also hear the Three Guardsmen of Oklahoma, Tilghman, Madsen, and Thomas. But Bud Ledbetter was just as important a figure, maybe more so than any of those, in my opinion, for the amount of time he was in law enforcement, the things that he did. And also, he was a teetotaler. He never drank, he never smoked, and he never bragged about himself. He did it the best of his ability, and he just served the community, but he had a strong, strong heart. But he loved Muskogee. He loved Muskogee, and he loved the community here, and we should never forget him and the legacy that he left our community.
Join us again next week for more of the best Oklahoma stories you've never heard, here on LoyalTV.